my wife said something the other day, which was so on point. She said, "Don't be McDonald's," and it's cheap, fast, terrible, wasteful
Delicious.
food. Yeah, delicious, right? Like I haven't had McDonald's in years, but I
Yeah.
think we all get the point where it's cheap, it's fast, it's entertaining, it's a huge rush of dopamine and
Hmm.
serotonin, and it's just like a flood to your feel good in reuptake inhibitors, basically. Like don't be McDonald's in the content that you create. Be, well, I don't know. I don't have a good analogy, but something
Chez
better.
Panisse.
Yeah, with substance and cooked with love.
There you go.
Make your art with love. Don't make your art with fear. Make your art with love.
I like that, man. And I think there was another thing that we wanted to talk about today, which I think is a little bit more tactical, but ties into this perfectly. So I mentioned that I just bought a membership to Noah's website. Before we hit record, you mentioned that you felt like you guys had kind of finally cracked paid memberships on the
Yeah.
Copy Blogger Academy side. Do you want to talk about that at all? I mean, we're sitting here, we're talking to people, we're telling them, hey, there is a career out there for you if you write like good quality information. Um, let's talk a little bit about how. Like, what do you think you guys learned in terms of selling memberships? Because that's tricky. The flip side of everything we're talking about is it's hard to make money at this, and the
Yeah.
temptation is there for the quick grab, if for no other reason than like you got to pay the bills this month, right? So I don't know. What have you guys learned in terms of selling paid memberships that you think might be helpful to other people?
I have
What's
learned,
changed?
yeah, well, I've learned a couple things. I wrote a lot about this as well, and I was a little nervous about being super vulnerable in terms of reporting the lessons that I made because I didn't want to be like I wanted to be sensitive to the fact that I am reporting these lessons to the people who also are subscribers,
Right.
so I didn't want to write to them as though
Yeah.
they were just some like mindless Stripe notification. It really was done from like a purist point where this was so much harder than I thought it was going to be, which was building a membership site.
Yep.
And I think the lessons are threefold. The first one is that the tech really, really, really matters. Like the experience matters so much. And Circle just completely changed the game for me. And it sucks. I had an opportunity to invest in it a couple years ago and I missed it. And honestly, I don't even know if they're profitable or not. It's one of those things where I wouldn't even care. It's just so clearly a superior product than the other membership platforms that it would be worth giving a shot just because, one of those like quality bets, I suppose. So Circle totally changed the game. And we've talked about the other ones, which weren't as good. Um, but yeah, like as soon as I found Circle, it made it so much easier to actually create the product that I wanted to. Because here's what happens when you create a membership. So I'll give you an example. Someone starts with a Substack and they say, "Oh wow, this is great. People are paying me $5 a month. It would be really great to have like some community elements in here." So then they say, "Okay, let me have a Substack and then let me open a Facebook group." And it's like, "Oh, okay, this is really cool, but I can't really combine the two, where the best I can do is create a post and then put the post in a Facebook group and some of the people can see it who are payers and other people can't, so it just gets weird." And then you'll want to go up one more where you say, "Oh wow, but what if we could do videos and like live presentations?" And it's like, "Okay, well, let's create a Zoom." And then all of a sudden you're using Substack to make your announcements about your presentations that you're doing on Zoom, to where
Mm-hmm.
you create the community and the networking and the experience on Facebook or Slack or whatever. So the whole thing just gets weird. And Circle completely solves for that. Like they just nailed it and they're continuing to improve it all the time. So the tech stack certainly played a big role. The second is that SEO still really, really, really sells. It's just, I have two main funnel points on my sales. So timstodds.com sells memberships, and I kind of do like an affiliate to myself, basically. Like if I sell it from my own brand, just because it's different companies.
Mhm.
And then Copyblogger, obviously. And most of the signups from Tim Stodds come from social media and my newsletter. And then most of the signups from Copyblogger just come from the long form content. And Tim Stodds definitely gets signups, but I think that has a lot to do with what we talked about a couple episodes ago, where it's like media brands are becoming much more personalized, and even company media needs to have people to represent them. And so I'm still not really sure how much of it is like a cross pollination behind the fact that people might see Copyblogger and then find out that it's me and then check me out and just kind of get in through that way. Um, I don't really care, to be honest. But the point that I'm saying is creating McDonald's content won't sell you a $500 a year membership. Like
Mhm.
people really, really do read the whole article, and then they pay attention, and they probably read the next one, and they think about it for a while, and they keep reading and they keep reading. It's not this impulse buy like selling an ebook would be. It's really not.
Mhm.
And so, that has really, really paid off. Um, and then the third thing that I would say is, man, the experience inside the community really matters. And here's the other thing I've learned is that, remember, we've talked about a couple of times where most of the people inside most of the um, content inside most of the engagement, excuse me, inside the community is going to be done by just a few people. That absolutely does not mean that the people who aren't engaging aren't paying attention. They
Mhm.
really are. So when I do a masterclass, I send it out to the email list. Right now it goes to about 900 people or so. There's hardly any comments on the master classes, and about 40% of any video that I send out, any presentation that I do, about 40% of the people watch it. And so it's like there's this weird duality where the engagement is run by a few people and you have to really, really appreciate them, but you also can't lose sight of the fact that just because people aren't engaging doesn't mean that they're not getting the most out of it. And all of those things, um, since I put it on Circle, and since like I really, really nailed it down and dialed it in, since I think December 20th or so was when I kind of soft launched the relaunch, and then just basically acted as if for 2023, like didn't make a big thing, didn't say, hey, we're new and improved. I just kind of pretended like it was this way the whole
It's
time.
always been this good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't had a single cancellation on the 30-day notice because there's a
Wow.
30-day refund. I haven't had one, not one, man. And I'm like,
Wow.
I'm feeling good about it. I'm feeling
That's
really good
awesome.
about it. Yeah.
That's really good. Well,
Thanks.
congratulations, man. Those are great tips too. I'm glad that the tech thing is working out. And I totally agree with the importance of long form content
Yeah.
and your lurkers. And specifically,
Lurker is nice.
yeah, they'll usually be they're usually like the vast majority of a community. What I'm finding too is that for content stuff, there's also this thing, they're not really lurkers. It's more like people who stay subscribed just because they want to interact someday. So like that's me with a
Yeah.
media operator. Do you ever get Jacob Donnelly's newsletter?
No, no.
It's called The Media Operator, and it's good. Jacob Donnelly, he writes about, running a media company. I think he's like head of sales at Morning Brew or something like that. He's some executive at Morning Brew, but I never read it. I never read it. I'm never in the Slack channel. And I've paid for it for 3 years now. And it's like the whole thing is in the back of my mind. It's always like, there's so much good information over there. The community that he's built is awesome. I mean, there's like heads of like 100 different great media companies inside this Slack channel. And I'm always telling myself, one of these days I'm going to go
One
over
day.
there. Yeah.
Do you
but I never
ever
do.
pay for stuff that like you don't ever intend on reading? You just want to support them?
Yes, yeah, that's me with the information.
Cool.
Yeah, do
Yeah,
you?
there's a Twitch streamer. His Twitch name is Pig. And and well, I enjoy his content a lot, but there's him and this other guy named Maynard. And Maynard, I haven't watched his shit in I don't even know how long, 4 years probably. But but I just know that he's like really, really passionate about the game. And I've talked to him on Twitter a couple of times. And so it's $5 a month for 4 years. I don't even know. What is that? 120, 240, right? So I'm giving him $240. I haven't watched a single video, but I just want to support him. I don't know.
I think it's kind of funny too, the whole like support model. It reminds me of Da
I don't like
Vinci.
it.
Do you ever think about how like okay, so Da Vinci would go out and find, what do they call them? Like I think they called them sponsors back then. You'd go out, you'd find some like royal guy who would be willing to put you up in a castle for 6 months and pay
Yeah.
for all your food, pay for all your, and then you'd paint a painting in exchange. And it's like nothing's changed. It's still the exact same way, except except now I'm the royal guy. So I thought it was kind of funny when we were talking about finding sponsors and stuff for the show. I'm like, man, that's the exact same model Da Vinci was using hundreds of years ago. It's nothing
Yeah.
has changed. It's exactly the same. Um,
Yeah. I I am still fine with the sponsorship model. I don't like as much the what do you call it? Because it's not like a sponsor. It's like you're tipping them. You're giving them donations. I don't like the
yeah, like the
donation model.
crowd community
Yeah,
support or something like that.
exactly. And it's not that I don't think it's fine. I just don't think that it's good business. Like if you're trying to make a living by sharing your art, whether that's video games or writing or the stuff that we talk about every day, there's just
Mhm.
way better ways to do it that don't even really require that much more effort, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think we've touched on this a couple of times.
I think
Like
we did too. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I think we've talked about this before.
a lot of creators struggle with, it's like the Patreon thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sign up to my Patreon if you like my newsletter. And it's like, that is one way to do it, but you'll make a lot more money if you can figure out how to offer something valuable that somebody wants to pay for because they want the product itself. As opposed to, they're signing up to tip you because they like you as a person. I think all these creators would be better served just thinking through that perspective, because what you're doing, if you build it so that people pay you because they like you, that's fine. But you're gonna be the first thing that goes whenever they got to trim the budget. And then
Exactly.
it's very hard to sell that business too if you ever want out. On the other hand, if you build something that's like valuable on its own, like a lot like investing newsletters were like the first to this. We talk about newsletters all the time without ever really acknowledging the fact that market analysts have been doing newsletters for decades, paid newsletters, and people pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year for those things, not because they like the analysts, but because one great insight could make them 10, 20, 100 times whatever they paid for the newsletter. So there's real value tied up in that. And as a creator, if you can find ways to tap into the value of what you're saying, as opposed to just the affinity for you or your brand, you'll always make more. And I think that's like, Copyblogger is an example of that. We're going to teach you how to build a business. It's not the same as like,
Mm-hmm.
sign up here because you like Tim.
Do you ever think, does the idea ever run through your head of connecting a paid newsletter to the podcast for us?
That's an interesting idea. I think it could, and it would probably help us clarify even more like what the podcast is about. But yeah, it's an option for anybody.
What
It's
do
an
you think
option
our
for
podcast is about?
when I come in here, I feel like I'm talking to people who want to make a living writing,
Yeah.
like a real living, not like struggle, and I that's who I feel like I'm talking to, and I feel like I'm part of that audience to some extent. So that's it for me. What do you think it is?
I think so too. I go back and forth in my head so much about whether people enjoy the relaxed nature that we have, where sometimes we veer off track or talk about opinions, or even like today was a perfect example. If we would be better off just serving the audience very, very specifically.
Mhm.
Um, and then I go back and forth in my head about like, no, it is the nature of who we are and our personalities that brings people to the show in the first place. And because of that, it's better to veer off track from time to time as opposed to being so strict and so educational. And the answer is probably both.
Mhm.
I just podcasts are they're really, really difficult mentally, because it is so hard to, when you write something, you have time and space to articulate your thoughts. And I just find it easier to write to a person who exactly who you're writing for, and what they want, and the message that you're trying to instill. Whereas with a podcast, it's basically like reflecting week over week. And when you do that, life is very nuanced. And so like every week is different. I didn't know that Balaji was gonna say some nonsense on Twitter that would get me so irritated that I felt like I had to come on here and talk to you about it, right? And so
Yeah.
and so I think it's hard to stick to a top. Who's done this really, really well, and I mean it, is Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income podcast. I mean, damn, how long has he been
Like
doing this for? 10
hundreds of
years?
episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, 10 years now. And he's had a really, really good ability to take liberty with this message and veer back and forth a little bit, while also not he's weaved on the road, let's call it that way. But he's been on the road the whole time. He's just gone to and fro a little bit, but I don't think he's ever stepped off that road. And there are times where I think, man, if we had a little bit more like stricter of a discipline in that regard, we could probably have more success in the metrics that we pretend we're not chasing. Right?
I think there's an interesting dichotomy between free media and paid media. And now that you mention it, I think free media is much more personality driven. Like if you look at a business like The Hustle, people read it in some sense for convenience, but mostly for the personality. Like
Yeah, the
it's like you could
humor.
get your news from anywhere. I want to get it from people that I like, who I think are
Yeah.
funny and fun. But I don't think people would pay for The Hustle. And it's because people don't really pay for personality. That's what we're saying here. Some people will, but it's hard to scale that. People pay
Oh,
for
that is
value.
such a good insight, Ethan.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me unpack that a little bit. So then if you're not paying for personality, what are you paying for?
People pay for value. And I mean, that is literally, and specifically, this is what Alex Hormozy would say. People always pay for a deal. Like they want to feel like they're getting more value than what they're paying for.
Yeah.
So that's why Trends is the paid product from The Hustle. They're both business related, but one very specifically offers to show you business opportunities, how to pursue different products, stuff like that. It's very much about capturing more value from your business. Whereas the other one is more like, hey, this is a fun, personality driven, news source. And I think the same thing goes for podcasts. So like you and I on this show, I don't know why people tune in. I like that they do, but I'm not sure why they do. But I think there's room for something like this to be largely personality driven. It's almost like we're having a conversation with the audience every week.
Yeah.
But if I think there's room to make a podcast like this paid, but it would have to be much more value driven, where it's like
Sure.
every single week, I'm going to break down for you the most effective SEO strategies that I'm using with my clients. I'm going to give you all the numbers, and I'm going to give you like whatever. I'll show you exactly what's working to give my clients more money. People would pay for that. People would pay for that in a newsletter form too, but I don't think they would pay for like, here's Ethan's opinions on biology this week. They just don't care. So
You want to hear something that's so interesting? On the blank page on my Substack that people are starting to discover, because every once in a while I mention it, and so it's like it's not so secret anymore. I did a little experiment, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where I I published the outlines of the master classes for the Copywriter Academy. So for instance, in the month of March, every Wednesday I did a 4-part series, and I have another one this Wednesday, the 4th one. And it's copywriting. So the first week I talked all about research. The second week I talk about like the different sections of a sales page. The third week, so last Wednesday, I talked about how to actually put all of those sections on a sales page. So it's like a formula, as opposed to people just staring at a page and be like, oh, I got to write copy now, which is like impossible. And then up next, I'm going to talk about how to get traffic to that page. Okay, so those are the 4 different sections. And I wrote my outline so that I could write my slides, so that I could do my presentation. And I published my outline as a paid post on my Substack. And I charged way more than I thought I should have. I put $15 a month, and 3 people signed up for it.
Really?
Yeah. And it's like such a proof point of what you're saying, where the whole point of that newsletter, blog, free creative writing outlet that I give to myself is like, there's no rules. I can write about whatever I want.
Yep.
And sometimes I write about stuff that has real measurable value, maybe, where there's like a who I am before I consumed this content and who I am after I consume this content. Like there's a journey. And yeah, I couldn't believe it. $15 a month, which isn't a lot for a membership. I think it's a lot for a Substack. People just typically don't pay that much for a Substack, but I was like, whatever. Like, what do I have to lose? I'm writing it anyway. Let's see what happens. And 3 people bought it. So, and there's no personality in it at all. It is nuts and bolts. Like, this is the outline of exactly how of the 13 different blocks of a sales page. So I think you really nailed it. You might be like totally onto something there.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I think a lot of people in media will tell you this, like, it's not that you can't sell the Patreon model. I mean, it definitely works for some people. It's just tough because it's easier to sell people on like what's in it for them rather than how much they like you,
Yeah.
So if you just, whatever, remember, appeal to people's selfishness, it's going to make you a lot more money in the long run. But that's awesome, man. I'm glad that that's working for you. Do you have plans to like continue growing that, or was that just like a small scale test?
Well, I'm battling the urge to sell it as part of my automation on my Tim Stodds newsletter, because I know I have a big enough of a following now where I know I could do it. I think if I have 1,000 paid subscribers at $15 a month, that's another form of like pretty life-changing money. But I'm scared to lose the whole point of it, which is there are no rules. And I think if I did that, it'll start becoming a job. And then if it becomes a job, then it's just dollars and cents decision. And I think the time that I would have to spend on making the blank page good enough for people to spend $15 a month would actually be more valuable if I spend it just continuing to close deals for Stodsy, So I'm at this real turning point in my career where I'm realizing that I can no longer say yes to everything, because I believe that when you're just getting started, like this whole idea of like say no more than you say yes, I don't think that's true at all. So much of the success I've had has just been showing up to things that I had no idea what I was in for. But when you get older, and when the ship, the analogy that I use when I was talking to my wife about it, like the ship that you're steering is bigger, and like you can't turn the ship as quickly as you used to. I have to say no to stuff now. And so I mean, look, I wrote a sales page for it. I like, all I got to do is push the button, but I don't think I'm going to push the button. I really don't.
Can I loft an option C out there?
Please. Yeah, please.
Okay. So this is a model that we talk about a lot here on this show, which is, and if you're new here, this is how media companies work. You basically have free products that you monetize via ads and affiliate deals. You have front end products and you have back end products. Front end products are usually $50 to $100 a year. Back end products are like $500 and up, and they can be all the way up into the many thousands of dollars. So what we've talked about so far is the free product, which is like the SEO that you're leveraging, the podcast. And then I think you mentioned that the Copyblogger Academy is in that $500+ range. So
Yeah.
that's technically the back end. And what you're seeing now with this $15 subscription is that there is demand out there for a front end product as well.
Yeah.
So even if it's not through your personal brand, to me, this is an indication that there might be room to add a front end inside the Copyblogger ecosystem. And like, you already know what the content's going to be. It's the same stuff you're using. It's like it's the light version of your back end content. You said it was an outline of the class that you used on the back end. So the kind of the light version of that could be the front end. And that would plug in perfectly to the model, because the way these typically work for people listening is like your free product sells the front end sells the back end. And I think what you're seeing is demand. People want that middle tier. It could be under Tim Stodd's, or you just use this as the indication of like, oh, I should just build my $15 a month subscription over on Copyblogger.
I think you're right, but I also think you're wrong. And I'm going to tell you why. So ever since I read $100 million offers, my Kindle has just been serving me the whole slew of $99 ebooks from the ClickFunnels crew. And I know what I'm doing. Like, I know I'm buying this ridiculously McDonald's content ebook so that somebody can try to pitch me on some $500 like build your online course business at the end of it. But it's 99 cents every time, and they're pretty easy to read. And so I read one of the Dan Henry ones. Dan Henry he's just one of the Russell Brunson proteges. I can't remember what his thing is called. It's pretty irrelevant, honestly. There was nothing about his book that spoke to me. It was called, I can't remember what it was called. His name's Dan Henry.
Digital Millionaire Secrets.
Yeah, there you go. Secrets. Yes, they always use the word secrets in there. And so I read through the book, and I found it really just basic. However, he had one chapter, which is why I always recommend reading books all the way through, even if you hate it, because this one chapter totally flipped a switch in my brain again, even though 99% of the book was just garbage. And the one chapter was just the value of high ticket items. And so the way I have it set up, and I've talked about this before, is Tim Stodd's and Copyblogger both have their free, personality driven, now that you've said that, I'm never going to get that out of my head now, newsletter. And then Copyblogger Academy is the front end product, and it's priced a little high to be a front end product, but let's just hold it there. And then agency services are my back end product. And so for Copyblogger, I have an agency attached to it, which is called Digital Commerce, and we've talked about that, right? But on the side, I've always worked with personal consulting clients that come to me from time to time, usually just through relationships. Like, I don't have a business on it or a website or anything like that. But through one of the newsletters that I sent probably 3 weeks ago, I got an email reply, and somebody said, hey, I want to hire you for a deal. And overnight, my newsletter, which monetizes on its own and sells the front end product, and that's all really great. But then overnight, it's a year-long contract at $5,000 a month, And so, suddenly 5 times 12, what is that, 60? Suddenly it's $60,000 of revenue that I would have to really, really hustle for if I'm selling a $15 a month front end product to the $500 a year back end product, which is Copyblogger Academy. And so that is the part about it which I battle, because there is a scalability factor as well. Whereas, okay, great, but like I said, it's just as much work to write one newsletter a week for 5 people as it is for 5 paying customers, as it is to write one newsletter a week for 5,000 paying customers. And so if I'm at $15 a month, I got 1,000 of them. Well, it's $15,000 a month, and sure, I could close 3 deals and get $15,000 a month in net revenue, but that's probably net, like even after taxes, that's probably $1,800 a month in my pocket, per client. And so the work balance is just so different, unless I want to build a team, So I really, really went on kind of a tangent there, sort of word vomiting through my thought process. But I've been having this little thought exercise recently on the idea that, like, no business is perfect. No business is without its pros and cons, and weighing how my time is best spent. And ultimately, where I landed, at least for the next couple months, final answer is that I already have the team and I already have the infrastructure to serve these high ticket clients. And all I have to do personally is close the deals. I'm already doing what I'm doing. I'm getting the leads through the Stodzy site and the Copyblogger site and the Tim Stodz site and my newsletter and through Twitter. I got more leads than I know what to do with right now. The hard part is saying no to the people that can't be at like $5,000 a month or so. And so dollar for dollar, right now, my time is best spent closing service deals as opposed to trying to build another content product business.
There you are.
I've spent time thinking about this, as you can tell.
Yeah, it seems like it. That leaves me with only one question then, which is, are you satisfied with Copyblogger Academy being priced where it is? Because technically, if you want to talk technically, it's a back-end product just because of the price range. Because the real difference between the two is that a front-end product is priced at the impulse buy level, and the back end is not. So theoretically, if you're already producing that, there is a chance that the revenue from that goes up if you drop it down to like the front end product range. Or you just think about it as, what it is, which is like a back end product for your more sort of committed customers. But have you thought through that at all? Like, is there any part of you that wonders if you would make more from Copyblogger Academy if you guys drop the price? Let me ask you this, and this is kind of like inside baseball, so you don't feel too pressured to answer. But like, do you have any sense for what the current conversion rate is? From what is it?
Well, I shouldn't say it's low.
It's probably normal.
Yeah, it's normal.
1 to 3% or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about 3%. That's exactly what it is. So obviously, these things. So my thought hasn't been, should I drop the price on Copyblogger Academy? My thought has been really what you're saying, which again is this mental rat race that I have in my head, where it's priced out of the impulse. Let me check this out. What's a good example of stuff that we all do? If there's a new brand or something that I find, let's just call it a clothing brand because that's something we can all relate to. Like, I'm not going to go to the store and then just drop a couple $1,000 on all the clothes. You'll buy like a t-shirt, you'll check it out. If you got a new sneaker brand, so for instance, Vivos, Barefoot Vivos, my wife bought one of those and now like she just cannot stop buying them. But she bought one and now it's just her favorite. And I think I am missing the opportunity to get people to say like, oh yeah, sure, let me check this thing out, by not having something that is priced more in a traditional front end product.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think you could be right, and that's what I'm getting at. But then what you said as well is like, well, some brands are willing to give that up, right? Like, there's no front end Gucci bag, right? Like, you're either going to drop the money or you're not. So I think it comes down to the decision of like, just what game are we playing here? And that ties into everything that we've talked about today. Is the game McDonald's content and outrage, or are you in it for the long game? How much money is enough, and where do you want to make it? All those are the types of decisions that I think people have to continually ask and continually re-answer. And that's how you play this game without going crazy, because it'll drive you nuts if you're not constantly thinking about what really matters,
Well, I'll tell you what I've really thought about doing is, originally the front end product tied to Tim Stodz was called the Bootstrapper, and I still have the domain, the bootstrapper.io. And this was one of the problems that I talked about with the tech stack, where I bought it on Podia. I had my courses up there, and then I tried to use Podia's community, and it just wasn't good. I think Podia is actually in a lot of trouble right now. I think it was a really great product, but I think they're just getting out innovated pretty quickly. And so I still have the domain, but for sake of my mental sanity, I took all my Bootstrapper members. It was around the same price. And I just said, you're in Copyblogger Academy now. Here's all the content that was in the Bootstrapper. Now you get this free timeline. They don't get access to the same stuff that like everybody who bought the full membership of the Academy bought, just because I thought that that would be like unfair. But nonetheless, I combined them all. However, I still get people asking me, it's rare. When I say that, it sounds like it happens all the time. There's been one or two instances, I should say, where people say, hey, the Bootstrapper had that weekly newsletter that I really, really loved, and I don't want all of this stuff with the Copyblogger Academy. It's just not for me. I just really loved the newsletter. And there's been a lot of times where I think about tying that product in the bootstrapper.io. I might even just put it back on Substack just to make it super simple and not overcomplicate it, you know, and have that be some kind of $9 a month, $70 a year tripwire product to get people lubricated to swiping their credit card, so that when they see $500 a year, it's like, damn, I'm already getting this much for the newsletter. How much better is these weekly presentations going to be?
Yeah,
That's what I think about.
I like it, man. I think there's a lot
Why
of
you want to
opportunity
write
there.
it for me?
I can't write another newsletter.
You're like, I'm not writing another newsletter
Yeah,
for years.
I currently do. What do I write right now? I write 3 newsletters per week right now, and then I'm thinking about starting my own up. I actually just signed up for Beehive yesterday. Yeah,
Cool.
I'm gonna get my own thing started up there. I want to start doing more breakdowns on paid, like how writers make money. Shout out to Chanel Basilio. She's been re-inspiring me with her Growth in Reverse
Nice.
series. Oh my God, dude, did you see the breakdown she did on Dickie Bush?
No, didn't.
So good. People got to go just check it out. Just look up Growth in Reverse, Dickie Bush.
Cool.
Yeah, she kills it. And I was reading it yesterday. I'm like, man, I just have a hankering to start to get back into the real deep dives on like how people do what they do. Not the exact same group that she focuses on, but I like the old copywriters and the old like publications and stuff like that.
Oh man, that would be so cool, Ethan. As soon as you said that, I just got so jacked up. Like breakdowns on old school, like the really balling on a budget, building a castle, like spending the rest of your life in southern France type copywriters. Those were like those were the ballers of the ballers for real. I would pay for that in a second. And especially just because I know you, I could see like the vibe that you would do it in, with like a lot of black and white pictures and some pinup suits, you know, and guys with cigars. I could just totally see it.
All right, I got customer number 1 right here.
Sign me up.
Awesome, man. Well, this was a good episode. I feel like we should maybe wrap it there, reaffirm to everybody. Well, we have no idea what we're talking about when it comes to the economy, but hopefully, I hope we're right and Balaji is wrong. But
Yeah, me too.
I guess we'll see you all next week if the US dollar disappears, and we'll all be talking about Bitcoin or whatever.
Yeah, it is good timing too. I don't know if you can hear the producer. He just woke up. Can you hear Thomas the tank engine in the background?
I can't, but
that's all I can hear is Thomas.
Tim and I answer to one person, and that is our producer.
Yeah, my 2-year-old son who determines when I get to record and not record.
Well, it was good seeing you, man. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Be sure to check out copybloggerpod.com, where you can find all the past episodes and sign up for our awesome newsletter, which goes out
Fridays
sometimes.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Appreciate it. See you next week.
Later.